Chapter 2746. When his voice rang out, everyone saw that a group of people had appeared behind that figure. The strength and aura of those people were not the least bit inferior to the figure that had just appeared. There were even a few figures whose aura was stronger than that of the figure that had just appeared. Seeing those figures appear, the LV6 Earth Martial Realm cultivator's face instantly revealed an extremely horrified expression. It was not because of anything else. The figure that had appeared under the attack of the spirit boat was so strong. That was the attack of the spirit boat. One attack was enough to kill an expert below the LV9 Earth Martial Realm. Even an expert at the LV9 Earth Martial Realm would be seriously injured under such an attack. However, that figure was not the slightest bit injured. Not only that, but the aura of those people who had appeared was obviously not much different from that figure's aura. What did that mean? It meant that the strength of those people and that figure was definitely above the LV9 Earth Martial Realm. Above the LV9 Earth Martial Realm? What did that mean? The Sky Martial Realm. The Sky Martial Realm. The LV6 Earth Martial Realm cultivator from the Evil Moon sect was completely dumbfounded. He looked at those figures that had appeared in front of him and the others, completely not knowing what was going on. He had originally thought that someone had suddenly jumped out to die and ruined his plans. Who would have thought that those people's strength would actually be so tyrannical? One had to know that there were not many experts with the strength of the Sky Martial Realm even in the one-star region. The few who did were all in the top forces. The top forces of the one-star region. Who knew how many times they could crush the forces of the three-star region? Even if the Evil Moon sect was already considered a super force in the three-star region, it was still the same. In all their lives, these people from the Evil Moon sect had only heard of the strength of the Sky Martial Realm, but they had never seen it with their own eyes. That was because such experts all stood at the top of the world. They were simply not people that people like them could see. They were not strong enough, nor were they qualified. However, at this moment, there were so many Sky Martial Realm experts in front of them. Everyone glanced over and shockingly saw over a dozen Sky Martial Realm experts. Compared to the number of people on their side, this number was really not much. However, as soon as they thought about the strength of these people, any one of whom could easily flatten the three-star domain they were in, the group of Evil Moon sect members shuddered. They wished they could faint right now. Some people were so scared that they wet their pants and collapsed on the ground almost unconscious. As for the demonic Moon sect expert who was at the 6th level of the Earth Martial Realm, he was so scared that his face turned pale and his hands and feet trembled. When he saw the figure standing in the aftermath of the collision raise his head to look at him, a horrified expression instantly appeared on his face. In the next second his figure suddenly dashed out and was about to rush outside. Run. Run. He tried his best to encourage the demonic Moon sect members to run outside to distract the other party, hoping to find a chance to survive. However, as soon as the words left his mouth, bang! The figure standing in the middle of the collision suddenly made his move. In the next second his body turned into flesh and blood in midair and fell to the ground. Chapter 2747. In an instant their bodies were severed at the waist and their corpses were strewn across the ground. Bang! 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 Their corpses fell from the sky. The people on the gigantic spirit ship in the sky were scared out of their wits when they saw the corpses of the Evil Moon sect members below. In the blink of an eye, they immediately drove the spirit boat and fled outside. Rumble. The spirit ship in the sky rushed outside as if it was being chased by a ghost. At this moment, the size of the abandoned continent had already collapsed to the center of the cave world. The people outside could clearly see the spirit boat flying out from inside as though it had seen a ghost. The 4-5-star and 6-star regions forces outside had no idea what was going on when they saw this scene. How could this terrifying killing machine rush out of the abandoned continent as if it was being chased by a ghost? What was happening inside? Before they could make any guesses, they saw an earth-shattering attack shoot out from the abandoned continent with a boom. Then, with a loud bang, the gigantic spirit ship, which was like a peerless killing machine in the eyes of the 4-5-star and 6-star regions elites, was crushed into countless pieces by a spirit energy hand that had appeared out of nowhere. It was crushed into a ball by the large hand and with a bang it was crushed into countless pieces. The Evil Moon sect's martial artists who had just entered the Earth martial arts realm guarding the abandoned continent did not escape the fate of death. They were all killed by the strong wind that swept up when the large hand rushed out. The crowd of people from various forces who were watching from afar had indescribable shock and horror on their faces. They looked at the spirit ship that had been crushed into countless pieces, then looked at the evil moon sect members who had been killed by the strong wind from the attack. They finally knew that an extremely terrifying change must have occurred in the abandoned continent. A force that surpassed the 3-star regions and above had arrived. Moreover, it was an extremely powerful force that far surpassed the top forces of the 3-star regions. Oh my God! The crowd looked at the scene in front of them in shock. Everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter. Everyone clearly understood that this battle for the treasure was no longer something they could participate in. They would not even have the chance to fish in troubled waters. After all, the strength of the person who was able to crush the gigantic spirit ship with one blow was probably beyond their imagination. What kind of person had appeared? 2-star regions? 1-star regions? The crowd guessed in horror. Only Zhang Beiyue and the others knew that the person who had appeared was far beyond their imagination. Young master. The middle-aged man standing beside Zhang Beiyue swallowed his saliva desperately. He looked in the direction of the abandoned continent with extreme shock. Yes, it's a Sky Martial Arts realm elite. Zhang Beiyue finished his words. They were not from the 4-5-star and 6-star regions around them. They came from the 3-star region. Naturally, they knew that the attack that could crush the evil moon sect's spirit ship came from a Sky Martial realm elite. It was no wonder the evil moon sect members of their minds. Chapter 2748. Even if the Zhan family joined forces with all the forces in the 3-star domain, they would not be a match for such a powerhouse. The other party could easily massacre them. The existence of a treasure on this abandoned continent had attracted such a powerhouse? However, powerhouses like them were rare even in a 1-star domain. Why would they appear in a 6-star domain? It had to be known that even they looked down on this 6-star domain. If they did not know that the ancient divine object was here, they would never have set foot here. Not to mention those Sky Martial Realm powerhouses. They might not even go to their 3-star domain. Why would they appear here? Could it be that the other party had also obtained information about the ancient divine object like them? Zhang Beiyue and the others guessed in horror. While they were guessing in their hearts, they did not know that the other party's purpose was not the ancient divine object at all. Your Highness. The figure in the aftermath of the collision immediately knelt down on one knee after killing the evil moon cult members and the spirit ship. She bowed to Xianxia and said, Situmer greets your Highness. Long live your Highness. As her voice sounded, the power around her exploded with a bang, scattering all the aftershocks around her. The face that was revealed was beautiful and cold. It was Situmer, the one who had led the heavenly dark guard outside the true Spill continent to invite Xianxia back to the palace under the orders of the Emperor of the Celestial Capital. Behind her, a group of Celestial Capital powerhouses who were on par with her. Even those who had won knelt down and said, The 18 commanders of the heavenly dark guard kneel and greet your Highness. Your Highness, please return to the palace with us. Your Highness, please return to the palace. A heavenly dark guard commander who was stronger than Situmer looked at Xianxia and said in a deep voice, Your Highness, your days are numbered. The Emperor has given the order to marry a woman you like in the 4-star skies. This is the Celestial Capital's 100-year plan. Your Highness, please do not be capricious. Yes. As he spoke, Situmer's voice sounded. Her pair of cold eyes stared at Xianxia, seeming to contain a myriad of emotions. However, she did not show any of it on her face as she advised, Your Highness, any woman in the world is yours to desire. As long as you are willing, the Emperor will not force you to marry according to his wishes. As long as your Highness is able to forget about that woman whose status and strength are incomparably low, the Emperor will no longer object to you marrying anyone in the 4-way heaven. Your Highness, please return with us. In fact, Situmer's heart was very happy. Celestial Capital was Celestial Capital, Celestial Capital, Celestial Capital, Celestial Capital and Celestial Capital. When they had Xianxia, they had Celestial Capital, 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 Se Celestial Capital, Celestial to him, Celestial Owl, Celestial Capital, Celestial Capital. Celestial Capital, Celestial Capital, Celestial Capital. But Yi Qianxian did not go to celestial capital. Although this didn't mean anything, it was likely that Yi Qianxian had come to this celestial capital to heal his wounds. Situmea was still very happy. Chapter 2749. Since His Highness didn't go over, did it mean that Luo Qingtong was not that important in His Highness's heart? Perhaps His Highness was interested in her for the time being and wanted to go against His Majesty, so he deliberately found such a lowly person to anger His Majesty. In fact, he didn't care so much about Luo Qingtong. As Situmea thought of this, the joy in her heart was indescribable. But soon the smile on her face froze. She saw Luo Qingtong in Yi Qianxian's arms. The latter was held in Yi Qianxian's arms, looking very serious. It seemed that he was protecting the treasure in his hand, the treasure in his heart. Situmea had never seen Yi Qianxian so concerned about a person. Who was this young man? How could he be so favored and loved by His Highness? Situmea looked at Luo Qingtong with a cold light flashing in her eyes. She was about to ask about Luo Qingtong's identity when Luo Qingtong's voice suddenly rang out. Brother-in-law, what are they talking about? A lowly woman? Are they talking about my sister? Are you going to marry someone else? Luo Qingtong raised her head, looking innocent and naive. When Situmea and the others spoke, she had already guessed their identities. People from Tiandu? Luo Qingtong had long been familiar with the things in Tiandu. Wilao, Beiqing, Fengyu and the others often mentioned this matter by her side. Last time when she and Yi Qianxian contacted each other through the 10 Dragons Ring and 9 Phoenix Ring, she had also been to Tiandu as a spiritual body. Although she had only stayed in Yi Qianxian's courtyard, she had been there. However, other than Beiqing and Fengyu, this was the first time she had seen someone from Tiandu. These people were forcing Yi Qianxian to return, forcing him to marry and leave behind his bloodline? And he even called her a woman of low status? Luo Qingtong smiled. She was not a pushover. Since these people were using the method of breaking up a pair of mandarin ducks on her head, then don't blame her for making them suffer. How dare she steal her man? Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. She was not someone who could only rely on her identity as Yi Qianxian to get back at them. One day she would fight her way to Tiandu and tell these people who this man belonged to. But now she was going to collect some interest. Luo Qingtong's voice was clear, and her eyes were full of innocence. She had returned to her previous appearance of Luo Xiaoqi. She was not stupid enough to expose her identity at this time and give these people a chance to target her and use her to restrain Yi Qianxian. There were many ways to deal with these people and vent her anger. Why should she put herself in danger? Let's see how I deal with them. The moment Luo Qingtong's words came out, the group of Tiandu experts frowned. Situmea's expression changed abruptly. Sister, are you Luo Qingtong's brother? She looked at Luo Qingtong and her voice suddenly became much sharper. She just felt that Yi Qianxian did not care much about Luo Qingtong, but this young man admitted that he was Luo Qingtong's brother. If Yi Qianxian came to the 6-star domain for Luo Qingtong's brother, then who could say that he did not care about Luo Qingtong? Chapter 2750. Thinking of this, Situme's heart was suddenly filled with unspeakable shame and jealousy. She looked at Luo Qingtong with eyes full of disgust and coldness. This young man was Luo Qingtong's younger brother. He was really a slut's younger brother, just like his sister, disgusting and disdainful. Situmea despised Luo Qingtong in her heart, but on the surface she tried her best to control her expression, not wanting others to see through it. But who was Luo Qingtong? Her eyesight was unparalleled. Unless Situmea could control every nerve and every muscle on her face and adjust her expression like a robot, she would be able to see through Situmea's thoughts with a single glance. This woman, was she jealous of her? Because of what? Was it because of this man? Luo Qingtong glanced at Yi Qianxian beside her and snorted softly. This damned man, he always said that she attracted bees and butterflies, and that she was spoiled because of his pampering. She didn't know who attracted more bees and butterflies. Luo Qingtong's lips curved up sweetly, looking at Situmea, who couldn't hide the jealousy and coldness in her eyes. Laughing softly, she said with a puzzled look, "Hey auntie, why are you looking at me with such an ugly and scary expression? Is it because my sister is going to marry my brother-in-law? You also like my brother-in-law." She looked at Situmea innocently, then suddenly realized, so it's like this. You people are so sinister. I knew it. You're an ugly freak, you don't have the slightest bit of beauty like my sister, and your strength and talent can't compare to her. If my sister was born in Tiandu like you, who knows how many times she would have crushed you. I really don't know where you got the face to slander my sister. So it's because you also like my brother-in-law and want to snatch him away, that's why you deliberately said that. It's a pity that my brother-in-law only likes my sister. Brother-in-law, don't you think so? As Luo Qingtong said this, her hands quietly pinched Yi Qianxian's armpits. I dare you to say no. Yi Qianren's figure stiffened. As soon as Luo Qingtong called him brother-in-law, he knew that the other party was up to no good. This woman was as ruthless as an Azura and as cunning as a fox. Yi Qianxian didn't open his mouth and just watched her ridicule Situmeyer. In fact, he didn't care about Situmeyer's thoughts at all. Whether she liked him or not, it had nothing to do with him. In his heart there was only Luo Qingtong. He didn't care about anyone else. But why did this woman pinch him? Yi Qianxian's body stiffened for a moment. He almost failed to control the power that was accumulating in his body and hurt Luo Qingtong. Ever since Situmeyer and the others had arrived, he had been on high alert, ready to make a move at any time, but this woman had still come to provoke him. Did she know that he had almost sent her flying? Yi Qianxian gritted his teeth and looked at Luo Qingtong. Seeing that she wanted to pinch him a second time, he hurriedly raised his hand and grabbed her hands. Then he coldly said to the group of Tiandu experts opposite him, "That's right, I only love Luo Qingtong. In this life I will marry no one but her. Unless father agrees to my condition, I will not return to Tiandu. And I will not marry anyone." After Yi Qianxian said this, he didn't forget to pinch Luo Qingtong's hand. Was it good now? This woman really was so complacent even when she was praising herself. As Yi Qianxian thought this, the corners of his lips curled up. In his heart he really liked Luo Qingtong's way of taking him to heart, declaring her sovereignty to others and not allowing anyone to touch him. This meant that this woman cared about him as much as he cared about her. Chapter 2751. Your Highness. Do you know what you're saying? How can a slut like Luo Qingtong be worthy of you? She gritted her teeth as she spoke. Luo Qingtong's voice rang out leisurely. Yes, someone like my sister isn't worthy, but someone like you who can't compare to my sister in every aspect is. She's a slut, but who are you? Someone who can't even compare to a slut. A slut? The moment Luo Qingtong's words left her mouth, Situmeyer's eyes burned with rage. Shut up. Lowly scum like you don't have the right to speak here. Your Highness, since you're so stubborn, then don't blame us for being rude. Situmeyer's eyes were cold. She looked at Yi Qianming. The latter's indifferent gaze towards her just now made her furious. But she couldn't even get a single glance from this man? And that woman called Luo Qingtong could be placed in the palm of his hand and protected like a treasure? Even her brother dared to be so presumptuous in front of her. Ugly person not comparable to Luo Qingtong. Every word that came out of the youth's mouth pierced Situmei's body like needles. She was insulted by a youth who was Luo Qingtong's brother, and Yi Qianming even affirmed the other party's words. The jealousy in Situmei's heart exploded in an instant. Boom. Her figure swept towards Luo Qingtong in an instant. She dared to call her an ugly person and said that she couldn't compare to Luo Qingtong. Slut. She wanted to see if the other party could bear the consequences of saying such malicious words. Bring His Highness back to Tiandu. Kill the rest without mercy. Situmeyer's voice was filled with murderous intent. Other than them, there was only Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianming left. Who else could she be referring to besides Luo Qingtong? When the 18 celestial capital experts heard Situmeyer's words, they immediately rushed towards Yi Qianming without hesitation. As for Luo Qingtong, if he killed her, then so be it. The other party was the younger brother of that woman called Luo Qingtong. Killing him might be able to sever the bond between His Highness and that woman. Speaking of which, it was strange that His Highness seemed to be possessed by the devil. He insisted on being together with that girl called Luo Qingtong. She was clearly just a young girl from a low-level continent in the 9-star domain. In their own homes, even if they were servants, they wouldn't use a woman of such status. His Highness had really been bewitched this time. With this thought in mind, everyone immediately rushed towards Yi Qianming. Everyone knew that Yi Qianming had fought with Emperor Tiandu before and was seriously injured. His meridians were broken and he wouldn't be able to use his full strength in a short period of time. Furthermore, it was very likely that he would not be able to use his full strength in the future. Under such circumstances, they weren't afraid that Yi Qianming would do anything to them. If it weren't for this, they wouldn't have dared to chase after Yi Qianming with just a dozen people. It had to be known that when Situme went to True Spill Continent to invite Yi Qianming back to the palace, she had directly mobilized the Heavenly Profound Guards. When they rushed towards Yi Qianming, the latter's eyes suddenly turned cold and he prepared to use the strength in his body. The meridians in his body had already been repaired and upgraded by Luo Qingtong. He didn't need to use his full strength to deal with these people. Chapter 2752. Luo Qingtong's voice sounded in his ears. Brother-in-law, let me down. I will let these people know that my big sister is not someone they can casually humiliate. They say that my big sister's strength and status are incomparably low, but the truth is that they are the ones who are truly low. As Luo Qingtong's words left her mouth, Yi Qianxian's eyebrows instantly furrowed. What was this woman doing? Suddenly Yi Qianxian seemed to think of something. He looked towards Luo Qingtong and his thin lips behind the white jade mask curled up. Good. His eyes were filled with adoration as he let go of Luo Qingtong. As Luo Qingtong's voice sounded out, Situme's lungs nearly exploded with rage. Shameless boasting. She angrily shouted. This was only an exalted realm youth. Although his strength was unattainable to the people of True Spill Continent, in front of her, he was nothing but a pile of trash. She didn't know where this youth had obtained such a fortuitous encounter. With such strength he actually dared to show off in front of her. Not only that, but Her Highness was actually allowing this youth to despise her. As Situme thought of this youth saying that she was inferior to that woman called Luo Qingtong, her eyes began to emit a venomous cold light. This youth was truly courting death. Situme had originally been prepared to take advantage of the time when Yi Qianxian was dealing with the 18 commanders to kill Luo Qingtong. Now that she saw this youth shamelessly boast that she wanted to deal with her, the sneer on her face became even colder. No matter what reason this youth had for doing this, whether it was a pretense or a bluff, or whether it was to give Yi Qianxian more time to deal with the 18 commanders, since this youth wanted to court death, then she would fulfill her wish. Absolute strength brought with it absolute confidence. Situme didn't believe that Luo Qingtong could threaten her. Did this youth think that he could frighten her with his clumsy schemes? Did he think that he could force her to not move against him? What a joke. With her own strength, how could she have the chance to play tricks? Situme sneered, not taking Luo Qingtong's words seriously at all. She attacked Luo Qingtong violently. The terrifying gale that was stirred up was enough to kill any martial artist below the Earth martial arts realm. The people outside could not see what was going on in the Blood City, but they could feel the terrifying attacks coming from Situme and the 18 Heavenly Xian guards. Feeling the terrifying aura hovering over the abandoned continent, their faces all revealed horrified expressions. Even though they were so far away, they had a feeling that they would be killed by this power. From this, one could see how terrifying the aura of this power was. However, so many Heaven Realm auras burst out in an instant. Could it be that the Heaven Realm expert that came from the abandoned continent was not the only one who killed the demonic moon sect members? With such thoughts in mind, the expressions on everyone's faces became even more horrified. At this moment in the Blood City, Luo Qingtong looked at the power that Situme was attacking her. The latter's face was filled with an insufferably arrogant expression. The power of the Heaven martial arts realm was indeed very powerful. No wonder she looked down on a martial arts realm cultivator like her. However, the corners of Luo Qingtong's lips curled up. Chapter 2753. Saying that she was trash with low strength and status and looking down on her? Luo Qingtong's smile was enchanting and evil. Then she would let them have a taste of being slapped in the face by trash. Boom. Luo Qingtong raised both her hands. As she raised both her hands in an instant, the entire cave world in the abandoned continent was filled with turbulent winds and clouds. It was extremely violent. The entire abandoned continent had collapsed until only the core of the cave world was left, which was the surroundings of the Blood City where Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian were. But because of this, the violent spiritual energy ocean's power had all gathered around the Blood City. Layers upon layers of accumulated power, becoming more and more terrifying, more and more serious. Once this power completely exploded, even the Blood City would not be able to suppress it. In the end, the entire abandoned continent would completely collapse. However, at this moment Luo Qingtong raised both her hands. That extremely dense and terrifying power in an instant seemed to have been summoned by something and madly attacked the place where she was. The Blood City that had originally blocked them out at this moment did not stop these powers from entering. Boom! These violent powers attacked in an instant, and with a boom they turned into countless powers and energy, wildly rushing into the evil blood bracelet on Luo Qingtong's hands. When Situmeyer and the others appeared, Luo Qingtong had noticed that the evil blood bracelet on her hands was vibrating slightly. After that, she vaguely felt that she could absorb the power of the spiritual energy ocean outside for her own use, stimulating the power of the evil blood bracelet. Luo Qingtong did not know if the appearance of Situmeyer and the others had caused the evil blood bracelet to sense danger, so through the power of the Blood City, it had formed some kind of connection with the power of the spirit ocean outside. Or perhaps the Blood City had sensed her danger, so it allowed the power of the spirit ocean to be used by her. In short, she was now able to use the power of the spirit ocean to activate the power of the evil blood bracelet. That was why she had asked Yi Qianxian to let her go. The latter must have guessed this as well. Otherwise he would not have let her go so easily. With Yi Qianxian's personality, he wouldn't have let her go and let her take the risk unless he was sure that she was safe. Boom! When Luo Qingtong's hands were filled with power, she raised her eyes slightly and looked at Situmeyo, whose expression had suddenly changed. She threw a punch forward. Heaven and Earth Tyrant Fist. Luo Qingtong blasted out a blow. In an instant the weather changed. The sea of spiritual energy was so dense that it had completely turned into water. Then, under the continuous disintegration and high pressure, it was continuously compressed and brewed. With a wave of Luo Qingtong's hand, it instantly swept out of the blood-colored bracelet. Then with a loud boom, it charged towards Situmeyer. The latter's blow was of the sky martial arts realm. At this moment, in front of Luo Qingtong's Heaven and Earth Tyrant Fist, it couldn't even withstand a single blow. This was the attack that the woman in the blood-colored battle armor in Luo Qingtong's consciousness had used to destroy the Heavenly Way's attack with a single blow. Countless thunderbolts and the arrival of Doomsday were all shattered by a single punch. Situmeyer's blow was no exception. The so-called tyrant was invincible in the world. The Heaven and Earth Tyrant Fist, even the heavens and earth were no match for it. Boom. Chapter 2754. She tried her best to channel her strength into the attack, but it was all to no avail. In fact, if not for the fact that Luo Qingtong's current strength was not enough and that the evil blood bracelet was severely damaged and the limited power it could release, Luo Qingtong would have been able to kill Situmeya with just this attack. But at this moment Situmeya was not having a good time either. Pfft! Situmeya spat out a mouthful of blood. Her attack was broken and in an instant her body flew back dozens of meters. Not only that, but Luo Qingtong's figure appeared in front of her in an instant. Looking at her arrogant face, she raised her hand and slapped her. This slap is for your disrespect towards my sister. You can't even beat me and you have the nerve to look down on my sister? Trash with low strength? I really don't know who you're talking about. Luo Qingtong said and slapped Situmeya again. She used the same strength she used to slap Situmeya and slapped her back. Situmeya's face, which had been slapped to one side, was turned to the other side in an instant. As for this slap, I'll return it to you on behalf of my brother-in-law. You want to control his life with just the likes of you. Luo Qingtong sneered. Go back and tell your emperor that Yi Qianxian belongs to Luo Qingtong. From top to bottom, from inside to outside, from body to soul. Go back to Tiandu. Luo Qingtong finished her last sentence and sent Situmeya flying with a kick. Situmeya was slapped twice by Luo Qingtong. Before she could regain her senses, she was sent flying again by Luo Qingtong. In order to deal with the power of Luo Qingtong's Heaven and Earth Tyrant Fist, she had poured all the power in her body into her attack. At this moment he was unable to gather the strength in his body. Facing Luo Qingtong's attack, he was unable to gather even a trace of strength. As a result, he was sent flying by Luo Qingtong's kick without any resistance. The retreating figure looked like a piece of trash that had been kicked away. Situmeya's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She had never thought that her brazen attack would turn out like this. Shouldn't she be the one to kill him, then toss him aside like a piece of trash? Why did it end up like this? The person who was kicked away like a piece of trash was actually her. Situmayer's body landed heavily on the ground. In an instant, the already severely cracked ground of the cave world was smashed into a huge pit. As her body flew out, there was a series of explosions. The 18 Heavenly Xian Guard commanders were also sent flying in front of her and landed heavily on the ground. Everyone spat out a mouthful of blood and lay on the ground. They looked at Xianxia with indescribable horror. Your Highness, your meridians. He was actually fine. Their eyes were filled with indescribable shock. The Heavenly Xian Guard commanders were battling Xianxia. Which one of them wasn't a strong person in Tiandu who could hold down a region? In the end, they couldn't even last one round against Xianxia. If this man's strength was at its peak, such a result wouldn't be strange at all. But, His Highness. Chapter 2755. When one's strength had declined to a certain extent, as long as one used an extremely strong power, it would backfire on them. They had absolute strength but were unable to use it. Therefore their fear and shock towards Xianxia decreased slightly. Who would have thought that when they were fighting with Xianxia just now, they would discover that there was not the slightest bit of hindrance in the use of the power in his body. Although he did not use his full strength, it was enough to shock them. Because Xianxia did not need to use his full strength to deal with the few of them. How could His Highness meridians not rupture? The group of Heavenly Xian Guard commanders were shocked. Even more shocked than them were the experts who were standing far away. They didn't dare to get close, but they were still paying attention to the scene. They looked at the scene in the distance. When they saw Situmayer and the 18 commanders attack, the shock on their faces was already indescribable. At this moment they were already numb. The appearance of a group of Sky Martial Realm experts was already a challenge to their nerves. At this moment this group of Sky Martial Realm experts was actually defeated. They were defeated. A group of Sky Martial Realm experts. Any one of them was enough to instantly kill all the people present 100 times. They were experts of the Heaven Realm. They were actually defeated. Everyone saw that the attacks of Situmayer and the 18 commanders were broken, and then one by one they were sent flying like dumplings. The terrifying aura in the sky instantly dissipated and they were sent flying backwards. It was almost impossible to describe their feelings. A group of Sky Martial Realm experts were sent flying. Didn't that mean that the people on the abandoned continent were stronger than these Sky Martial Realm experts? What kind of strength was that? The crowd could not imagine. They did not even know what the lowest level of Sky Martial Realm was like, let alone the higher level of Sky Martial Realm. Moreover, the power that defeated those Sky Martial Realm experts was most likely beyond the level of Sky Martial Realm. As the crowd thought this, their hearts became even more numb. They looked in the direction of the abandoned continent. They did not know who had defeated such experts. Was it the person who had obtained the treasure? Was this the power of the treasure, or was it the strength of the other party? The places where the Tianfeng Chu family, the Lian family of the Flying Star sector, and the rest of the Li family of the Flying Star sector were all quiet. They didn't dare to imagine what kind of experts they had been with in the abandoned continent. To be able to blow away so many Heaven Realm experts, his opponent's strength had likely reached an extremely terrifying level. After all, even with the help of treasures, if the other party's strength was too weak, it would be impossible for them to deal with so many experts. Not to mention sending them flying. So that person's strength was definitely extremely tyrannical. At least he was on the same level as those Heaven Realm experts. On the other side, everyone from the Zhang family had an indescribable feeling. The middle-aged man standing beside Zhang Beiyue looked in the direction of the abandoned continent in the distance and said, "It seems that I was thinking too much before." Earlier he was still worried that it was extremely likely that the black-clothed figure would be unable to protect that ancient divine artifact. Now it would seem like this thought of his was laughable. The other party had not only protected that ancient divine artifact. It was clear that even if the emperor came, he would not be able to take it away from his hands. Unfortunately, the other party was the culprit who caused them to fail on the verge of success and miss the ancient divine artifact. If possible, he did not want the other party to obtain the ancient divine artifact. However, it seemed that this idea of his would not be realized. Chapter 2756. In the direction of the abandoned continent, with a boom, the entire abandoned continent exploded. The abandoned continent, which had already shrunk to a very small size, completely disintegrated into countless fragments of dust that drifted into the starry sky. At the same time, the figures on the abandoned continent were completely revealed to everyone. The figures of the Xianxia guards, Luo Qingtong and Xianxia were faintly discernible amidst the dust that filled the sky. At this moment, Chu Yufei, who was in the direction of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Feixing Lian clan, suddenly said to the elders of the Tianfeng Chu clan, "Elders, the person who obtained the treasure is most likely the man in black who chased after Luo Xiaoqi. If he is really that strong man, what will happen to the Tianfeng Chu clan? You know, brother Lingfeng and brother Xiaofeng offended him in order to protect Luo Xiaoqi. If he attacks the Tianfeng Chu clan..." Chu Yufei covered her mouth, looking anxious and worried. Only a pair of beautiful eyes flickered with a cold and smug light as she narrowed them slightly. Chu Lingfeng and the others were finished. If the man in black was really the one who obtained the treasure, he might not attack the Tianfeng Chu clan. Even if he didn't, given the fear and suspicion of the elders, Chu Lingfeng, Chu Xiaofeng, and the 8th elder's people were doomed. Chu Lingfeng's young master had reached the end of the line. If the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan didn't want to get into trouble, they could only depose and expel their young master. When the time came, they might just cripple his martial arts and send him to the man in black to appease his anger. However, the man in black might not take Chu Lingfeng seriously. Chu Yufei said this only because she wanted the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan to give up on Chu Lingfeng, their young master. After all, no matter how strong his bloodline power and talent potential were, how could he compare with a Sky Martial Realm expert? Not to mention that expert could even send a group of Heaven Realm experts flying. As Chu Yufei thought of this, she restrained the cold light in her eyes. However, as soon as the words left her mouth, she heard cries of surprise from the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan. "Look! The person who obtained the treasure. It's that white jade masked man. It's the leader of those white jade masked men." Hearing this voice, Chu Yufei's pretentious voice was instantly stuck in her throat. Her prepared speech, which could force Chu Lingfeng and the 8th elder's people into a corner, was suddenly silenced. "It's that white jade masked man," she said in disbelief as she raised her head and looked in the direction of the abandoned continent. Sure enough, he saw Luo Qingtong and Xianxia floating in the air. They were confronting the commanders of the Heavenly Profound Guards. Seeing this scene, Chu Yufei's mind went blank. The ones who obtained the treasure turned out to be those white jade masked men. And it was the leader of the white jade masked man, who was very close to Luo Xiaoqi. Her gaze was fixated on Yi Qianming, who was dressed in a luxurious and extraordinary robe and was shrouded in an extremely wild and powerful energy. Instead, she ignored Luo Qingtong, who was beside him. It was not Chu Yufei's fault. Luo Qingtong was wearing a white jade mask and was very far away from her. Chapter 2757. At this moment, all her eyes and attention were on Yi Qianxian. Her mind kept echoing. The other party turned out to be a powerhouse in the Sky Martial Arts realm. He turned out to be a powerhouse in the Sky Martial Arts realm. She should have thrown caution to the wind and clung to him. In this way, such a powerful helper and backer would be hers. Chu Yufei's heart was filled with unspeakable regret. She hated herself for not being more clingy before. Even if the other party was gay, he still had to continue his bloodline. Could he really refuse such a weak and pitiful girl who relied on him? As long as she held on at that time and let him think that Luo Xiaoqi's sarcastic words were just slander. At that time he would naturally believe her innocence and kindness. And as long as she could get a chance, she could climb into his bed and cling to him. She didn't believe that the other party could resist her means. In the end, all of this was ruined. Not only was the other party not her helper but Luo Xiaoqi's helper. Wait. Thinking of this, Chu Yufei's face suddenly stiffened. She suddenly remembered that she just said in front of the elders that the person who obtained the ancient divine object might be the black-clothed man and would be unfavorable to the Tianfeng Chu family. But now it was clear that the person who obtained the ancient divine object was the white jade masked man. Then the other party wouldn't be unfavorable to the Tianfeng Chu family. Because Luo Xiaoqi was there, she would definitely protect Chu Lingfeng and the others. And even if the white jade masked man didn't like Chu Lingfeng, he wouldn't do anything to the Tianfeng Chu family. So, not only would Chu Lingfeng and the others be fine, but they would also become the treasures of the Tianfeng Chu family. After all, with Luo Xiaoqi's relationship, they could have such a strong backer. Not only would Chu Lingfeng and the others be fine, but they would also be worshipped by the Tianfeng Chu family. Sure enough, just as she thought of this, she heard Chu Xiaofeng's ecstatic voice. Haha. If it's that person, then Shaoqi might also be fine. Chu Xiaofeng, Chu Jingyi and the others looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianming with excitement. Chu Xiaofeng sneered as he looked at Chu Yufei and said, Humph, some people think that the person who chased after Little Seven obtained that treasure. So what? Are you disappointed? Chu Yufei. How much do you want our Tianfeng Chu family to suffer? He actually dared to say such alarmist words. If our Tianfeng Chu clan is destroyed by other clans, what good will it do you? What an ungrateful wretch. Chu Yufei's face instantly paled when she heard Chu Xiaofeng's words. She never thought that the one who got the treasure would be the white jade masked man. He had no way of retorting to Chu Xiaofeng's words. The group of Tianfeng Chu elders also looked at her suspiciously. Chu Yufei's words were indeed suspected of instigating them to deal with Chu Lingfeng and the 8th Elder's faction. However, this wasn't the time to care about this. The Tianfeng Chu elders looked at Chu Xiaofeng and the others excitedly and asked, Do you know that person? They looked at Yi Qianming. We don't know him, but one of our friends is very familiar with him. It's just that Chu Yuqing and the others wanted to kill her and almost killed the young master. Elders, you must uphold justice for us. Chu Xiaofeng's words instantly made Chu Yuqing and the others' faces as white as a whitewashed wall. If Chu Xiaofeng and the others had complained before, they might have been able to resolve it through the power of their respective clans. But now they used Luo Shaoqi's name to say it. Chu Yuqing and the others knew that they were finished. Even if it was to curry favor with that Sky Martial Realm expert, the elders wouldn't let them go. They couldn't deal with Chu Lingfeng anymore. Everyone was paralyzed on the ground. Luo Qingtong didn't know the situation here. Chapter 2758. Their bodies were hunched over and the aura of their power had become very strange in an instant. Luo Qingtong could not describe that feeling. It was as if something was brewing among them. It made her feel very uncomfortable. Qianren, you have to be careful. She narrowed her eyes slightly and reminded Yi Qianxian. The latter nodded silently and raised his hand to protect her behind him. Don't make any more moves later. This is not the time for you to fight with them. Yi Qianxian's voice was slightly deep. He did not doubt Luo Qingtong's ability and strength at all. However, the strength of the Sky Martial Arts realm was really too strong. It was not something that ordinary people could compare to. Luo Qingtong had used the power of the hegemonic fist of heaven and earth to send Situmea flying. This was already her limit. She might not be able to use such power later. Situmea and the 18 commanders would not give her another chance. Most importantly, the change in the aura of Situmea, the 18 commanders and the others gave him a very bad feeling of danger. Yi Qianxian rarely felt such a feeling of danger. However, when he did, it meant that the other party had something that was enough to threaten him. What could it be? Given the strength of Situmea and the others, even if there were another 100 of them, they might not be able to do anything to him. Yi Qianxian's brows furrowed. Suddenly he seemed to have sensed some aura and his expression changed abruptly. Qingtong, you must follow closely behind me later. Don't leave me. Yi Qianxian's voice had become solemn and urgent. Luo Qingtong's heart skipped a beat. Just as she was about to ask him what was wrong, she sensed that the aura of Situmea and the others suddenly rose abruptly. Then, with a boom, their aura suddenly exploded in an instant and poured into the circle that they had formed. Boom, boom, boom. Streaks of violent aura rose violently in an instant, and then gathered in one place. Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes were opened, and she could clearly see that Situmea and the others were injecting their auras into the circle they were in. Shockingly, there were also streams of life force. Situmea and the others were actually using their own life force as a sacrifice to raise their own strength. Not only that, when their auras were injected into the circle, the aura of the circle changed instantly. A faintly discernible shadow instantly appeared within the circle as if it had traversed the void. As Situmea and the others poured in their auras and vitality, Luo Qingtong discovered that what they had set up was actually an array formation. They were using their bodies to form a formation, using their own strength and vitality as the power to summon something. Luo Qingtong's expression suddenly changed. At this moment, Situmea and the others' strength had already reached their peak. At the same time, the life force they had injected into the formation was also extremely huge. Luo Qingtong's preliminary estimate was that they had injected at least 100 years of life force. With such a huge amount of life force and strength just to summon a shadow, how strong was the other party? What were Situ Mei and the others summoning? Just as Luo Qingtong's expression changed slightly, Yi Qianxian looked at the shadow that was faintly discernible in the circle formed by Situ Mei and the others, and his expression was indescribably solemn. Father. Chapter 2759. As soon as the other party's figure appeared, he immediately sensed the aura. This aura was none other than the Emperor of Tiandu. Situ Mei and the others used their own strength and vitality to summon the incarnation of the Emperor of Tiandu far away in Tiandu. Seeing the huge figure in the sky, the majestic and domineering aura instantly filled the entire starry sky where Luo Qingtong and the others were. Even the people from the various forces who were far away and watching the scene here had a terrifying feeling of being strangled by the throat. That terrifying figure seemed to have a huge power that could kill them with a single thought. No one saw it with their own eyes, but for some reason, their hearts were all shrouded in this kind of shadow. Their foreheads and backs were all dripping with cold sweat. Some people who couldn't bear this pressure instantly rolled their eyes and fainted. A group of human martial realm and even earth martial realm warriors. The moment that figure appeared, some people actually fainted from fear. From this, it could be seen how vast and boundless the power carried by this shadow was. Yi Qianxian's pupils contracted violently. Divine Sense Incarnation. He looked at the huge figure that appeared above Situ Mei and the others. Father, you really put in a lot of effort to catch me. The Divine Sense Incarnation required a part of one's strength and divine sense to be sealed in a spiritual weapon. If someone activated this spiritual weapon, the Emperor of Tiandu far away in Tiandu would be able to use the connection of this spiritual weapon to control the actions of the incarnation in an instant. And the one that appeared here was the Emperor of Tiandu's Divine Sense Incarnation. The Divine Sense Incarnation consumed a lot of strength, and when it was sealed in the spiritual weapon, the Emperor of Tiandu's own strength would be weakened and reduced to a certain extent. Yi Qianming didn't expect the Emperor of Tiandu to use the Divine Sense Incarnation in order to bring him back. If he had not guessed wrongly, other than Situ Mei and the other celestial capital experts who were searching for his whereabouts all had such a spirit artifact on them that could summon the celestial capital emperor's spirit artifact. As he thought of this, Situ Mei and the others on the other side had already wiped the blood from their lips. Situ Mei looked at Yi Qianming and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, the Emperor has ordered us to bring you back at all costs. Please don't struggle anymore. As for you..." She sneered at Luo Qingtong and said coldly, bewitching His Highness. "As the younger brother of that slut Luo Qingtong, you deserve to die." Situ Mei's face was as ferocious as a demon's. She didn't know how Luo Qingtong had defeated her. Perhaps there was something strange about this abandoned continent. Or maybe it was because of the Blood City just now. But no matter what the reason was, she had been slapped in the face by a young man in the Venerable Realm. Moreover, the other party was actually Luo Qingtong's younger brother. That woman whom she hated so much that she wished she could kill, her younger brother, ruthlessly slapped her twice and even sent her flying with a kick. Situ Mei had never suffered such humiliation before. Among the many noble ladies of Tiandu, there weren't many who could be compared to her. She had always been proud of her strength and family background. Chapter 2760. Just thinking about it made Situ Mei want to go crazy. Her gaze was like a poisonous snake's tongue, licking Luo Qingtong's body. She then knelt down respectfully in front of Emperor Tiandu's spiritual incarnation. "Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please kill the person who bewitched Her Highness and welcome Her Highness back to the palace. Your Majesty, please take action." The voices of the 18 commanders also rang out. At this moment, Emperor Tiandu's spiritual incarnation was completely formed. His gaze instantly focused on Luo Qingtong. "You are that woman's brother?" Emperor Tiandu's voice was cold. The moment he was summoned, his consciousness had already been injected into this spiritual incarnation. At the same time, his own strength was also injected into it. At this moment, his voice was mighty, looking down on Luo Qingtong like a god. His eyes were full of disgust. The other party was that woman called Luo Qingtong's brother? It was that woman who caused Yi Qianming to no longer accept his orders. She even defied his orders and refused to return to Tiandu with him. Emperor Tiandu thought about it and instantly looked at Luo Qingtong with eyes full of killing intent. "Return to the palace with me. I can spare her life." He looked coldly at Yi Qianming. But you have to break all ties with that woman and obey my orders to marry her. Before Yi Qianming could speak, Luo Qingtong's voice suddenly sneered. Smelly old man, is your brain damaged? You want my brother-in-law to break all ties with my sister? Who do you think you are? Besides, you are not qualified to kill me. Luo Qingtong's gaze was cold. What she hated the most was others threatening her. When she was weak in her previous life, countless people threatened her that if she did not obey their orders and was not used by them, she would die without a burial place. In the end, they died in her hands. Luo Qingtong was a person who was never bound by ethics or morals. She only had two standards for dealing with people: those who treated her well and those who didn't. Those who treated her well, she would naturally repay them 100-fold. Those who treated her badly, even if they were her blood relatives, she would not let them off easily. At this moment, Emperor Tiandu was treating Yi Qianxian as a tool, wanting to seize the greatest benefits before his death, which really disgusted her. Not to mention that the other party didn't treat Yi Qianxian as his son. Even if he really did it for the good of Yi Qianxian, Luo Qingtong wouldn't give him any face. Who wasn't born and raised by their parents? Why should I be humiliated by you? She even used her to threaten Yi Qianxian. Luo Qingtong only had 4 words to say to this, and that was, F***CKU. She raised her hand and pointed a middle finger at Emperor Tiandu. You want to separate my elder sister and brother-in-law? Dream on. Let me tell you, my elder sister and brother-in-law are determined to be together. Not only will they be together in this lifetime, they will also be together in every lifetime. Smelly old man, you don't need to care so much. When her words came out, Emperor Tiandu's face instantly became furious. Shut up. The corners of Yi Qianxian's lips curled up. He liked Luo Qingtong's pride and arrogance when she protected him, loved him and cared about him. He was not afraid of the difficult road ahead, not afraid of the wind and frost of swords, not afraid of strong enemies surrounding him. He was only afraid that she would first give up on him. He was afraid that she would not be willing to persevere with him, afraid that she would not trust him enough, afraid that after he turned around she would give up and leave. Chapter 2761. I won't let her go. Yi Qianxian's voice was cold. He looked indifferently at the furious Emperor of Tiandu and said coldly, Father, if you didn't hear me clearly, I'll say it again. I will only be with Luo Qingtong in this life and for all eternity. My wife, the one who will live and die with me, can only be Luo Qingtong. There is no one else. Good. The Emperor of Tiandu smiled instead of being angry. Since that's the case, don't blame me. Boom. In an instant he charged towards Yi Qianren. As he attacked, in an instant the stars in the heavens and the earth moved and space shattered. In the starry sky, the Milky Way hung upside down and countless hurricanes and waves suddenly appeared in the sky. Terrifying spiritual chi vortexes filled the sky as they swept wildly in the direction of Yi Qianxian. This kind of power was not much inferior to when the abandoned continent had completely crumbled and collapsed. The waves of power that Situmayor and the others had unleashed earlier paled in comparison to the Emperor of Tiandu's attack. If their waves of power were a small lake or a small river, then the Emperor of Tiandu's attack was a raging sea. It was boundless and boundless. Its power was monstrous and terrifying. Boom. Seeing the Emperor of Tiandu's attack coming, the power around Yi Qianxian's body moved without wind. With a boom, it was as if a giant Kuanping had leaped out of the sea. Yi Qianxian's body instantly thundered like a tsunami. Then the power in his body met the Emperor of Tiandu's attack. Countless roars of tigers, leopards and dragons, accompanied by the cries of phoenixes, rushed toward the Emperor of Tiandu's attack. The power around Yi Qianxian's body formed a myriad of divine beasts. Its power and strength were not much inferior to the Emperor of Tiandu's wolf. Boom. Their attacks collided in an instant. Yi Qianxian's meridians instantly emitted a cracking sound. His expression didn't change. He was about to continue exerting force. Even if his meridians were to break, he was going to destroy Emperor Tiandu's divine sense incarnation. But at this moment, Situmayor and the others rushed towards Luo Qingtong. 18 heavenly profound guard commanders and Situmayor. Even if Luo Qingtong could use the tyrant fist of heaven and earth, she still wouldn't be able to deal with them. What's more, the abandoned continent had already collapsed. Luo Qingtong couldn't use the heaven and earth tyrant fist again. She didn't have that much strength left to use. Xianxian's expression changed slightly. He immediately retracted the power he was about to unleash. If he unleashed all of his power, all of his meridians would immediately break. At that time, even if he destroyed Emperor Tiandu's divine sense avatar, he would not be able to protect Luo Qingtong from the attacks of Situ Mei and the others. He couldn't use all of his strength. Xianxian's eyes were cold. He raised his hand and clashed with Emperor Tiandu's divine sense avatar. With a boom, his body was knocked back several hundred meters by the power of Emperor Tiandu's divine sense avatar. In a situation where he couldn't use all of his strength, with only 30% of his meridians recovered, he was no match for Emperor Tiandu's divine sense avatar. One had to know that Emperor Tiandu had projected all of his strength and divine sense. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to catch him. If Xianxian was alone, he could easily defeat Emperor Tiandu's divine sense avatar and escape. After all, Emperor Tiandu didn't know that his meridians had recovered and he could use all of his strength again. But what about Luo Qingtong? Xianxian's expression was grave. Chapter 2762. Qianren to the left. Luo Qingtong's voice rang out in Xianxian's mind. He instinctively shifted to the left. He had absolute faith in Luo Qingtong. Before he knew what she was going to do, his body reacted first and he teleported over. Boom. Xianxian had just moved to the left when an attack from Emperor Tiandu's consciousness slammed into where he had been standing and extended to the right. If Xianxian had been there, he would have had to take the attack head-on. This was because Emperor Tiandu's consciousness clone had appeared on his left. However, because of Luo Qingtong's warning, Xianxian didn't take the attack head-on. Instead, he stood in front of Emperor Tiandu's consciousness clone. The moment the latter appeared, it was as if he had directly collided with Qianren and was sent flying with a single move. If not for the fact that he couldn't use his full strength, Xianxian would have been able to scatter Emperor Tiandu's consciousness clone with this move. Qingtong. Xianxian's eyes flashed as his voice rang out in Luo Qingtong's mind. You can see his attack? His eyes were burning. Xianxian hadn't expected Luo Qingtong to be able to see through Emperor Tiandu's attack. Even he couldn't see through Emperor Tiandu's attack, but Luo Qingtong could? Luo Qingtong shook her head at Xianxian's words. It's not that I can see it, it's that I can foresee it. Luo Qingtong's lips quirked. She had to thank the new eye technique she'd activated on the abandoned continent. Foresight. The power of Luo Qingtong's eye technique was linked to her strength and mental strength. With her current strength, it was impossible for her to see through Emperor Tiandu's attacks. However, Luo Qingtong's latest pupil technique, Foresight, allowed her to see what happened in the next second that was related to her. Under such circumstances, Emperor Tiandu's attack was naturally in her eyes. Although he couldn't open up 3D mode like his eyes and analyze the Tiandu Emperor's attack power, range, weakness, speed and so on, clearly he could counterattack and counterattack. But for Xianxian, as long as he was given a hint with his strength, he would definitely not lose to the other party. It was a pity that the number of times she could foresee was limited. After all, it consumed too much mental power. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong would have cooperated with Xianxian and played him to death. The Emperor's expression instantly changed after seeing Xianxian's attack. He didn't expect Xianxian to be so coincidental. Xianxian dodged his attack a second before it was about to hit him. Not only that, Xianxian even appeared right where he was about to go. Was this a coincidence? Emperor Tiandu's expression was grave. He was very wary of this son of his. Xianxian had been different from ordinary people since he was young. With the heavenly veins body, his strength was constantly growing. Emperor Tiandu didn't even know when his son had become strong enough to fight against him. If it weren't for the hidden dangers behind his heavenly veins body, Emperor Tiandu didn't know how much Xianxian could have grown. Such a son was both a help and a hidden danger. Unfortunately, he couldn't control him. Chapter 2763. Boom. His figure once again charged towards Luo Qingtong and Xianxian. However, under Luo Qingtong's foresight, he was no longer able to gain any advantage. Bang. Another attack slammed into him and his figure was scattered once again. The projection of the Divine Will incarnation faded a lot. After all, this power was previously sealed in his spiritual artifact. After being stimulated by Situ Mei and the others, it condensed and condensed. Now that it had been scattered by Xianxian, the power within had naturally dissipated. When the power of his projection completely dissipated, his divine will incarnation would also completely disappear. As Emperor Tiandu thought of this, his expression became even more gloomy. He looked in Xianxia's direction and felt that all of this was not so simple. The first time could be said to be a coincidence, but why was he able to predict his attack and actions the second time? For someone like Emperor Tiandu, he would not wait until the third time to react. His gaze was fixed on Luo Qingtong. He felt that all of this was related to her. One had to know that Yi Qianren didn't manage to escape from his first attack. This meant that it was not him. It was this young man, Luo Qingtong's younger brother. Emperor Tiandu's gaze was fixed on Luo Qingtong in shock and disbelief. The latter only smiled sweetly at him, then raised her hand and gave him the middle finger. Her meaning was very obvious. How was it? Did you feel good? Luo Qingtong's middle finger said silently. Emperor Tiandu did not know what Luo Qingtong meant by giving him the middle finger, but when he thought of how Luo Qingtong had scolded him earlier, he knew that this was not a good sign. Immediately his eyes darkened. Bastard! His voice was cold as he charged towards Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian again. This time his target was Luo Qingtong. Regardless of whether she was the culprit or not, Emperor Tiandu could not let Luo Qingtong off just based on her contempt for him. However, Luo Qingtong was behind Yi Qianxian, and the man's figure was always the first to block her. Coupled with Luo Qingtong's foresight, Emperor Tiandu could not deal with Luo Qingtong at all. Instead, Yi Qianxian had seized the opportunity to scatter his figure twice in a row. Emperor Tiandu's face finally changed when he saw that his figure was becoming fainter and fainter. He could no longer maintain his divine will incarnation. He was certain that Luo Qingtong had seen through his attack. A young man at the Exalt realm was actually able to see through his attack. This was simply a fantasy story. But now, this fantastical thing had happened in front of him. The Tiandu Emperor had no choice but to believe it. Good. Good. You're very good. Emperor Tiandu's face was cold. He looked coldly at Luo Qingtong behind Yi Qianming, and then with a boom his figure completely exploded in an instant. A terrifying violent force raged in an instant and blasted towards Yi Qianming. At the same time, a vortex silently appeared where Luo Qingtong was and sucked her in. If you want to find her, go back to Tiandu. Emperor Tiandu's cold voice came from the depths of the vortex. Chapter 2764. Once Luo Qingtong was transported to Tiandu, she would fall into the hands of the Emperor of Tiandu and her identity might be exposed. If the Emperor of Tiandu knew that she was Luo Qingtong, he would not let her go and use her to threaten Yi Qianming. How could Luo Qingtong let such a thing happen? Seeing that the huge whirlpool was about to take her back to Heaven Capital, Luo Qingtong slashed out with the life and death yin-yang sword in her hand. The power of life and death contained in her life and death sword was the most powerful invisible force in the world. Although the Emperor of Tiandu was powerful and Luo Qingtong could not break the huge vortex, she could still leave a mark on it. This was enough for Luo Qingtong. Boom. The crimson pupils in her eyes glowed brightly as she pushed her eye technique to its strongest level. He saw it. Luo Qingtong's eyes shone brightly. Following the small mark left by her life and death sword, Luo Qingtong saw a point to escape from this huge vortex. Boom. Her figure slammed into that point in an instant. You overestimate yourself. The Emperor of Tiandu's voice was cold. He sat in the golden palace outside the clouds and watched as Luo Qingtong's figure was about to escape from the vortex. He raised his hand and with a boom, a huge spiritual hand shot out from the depths of the vortex and grabbed at Luo Qingtong. This was because this huge vortex was connected to the Emperor of Tiandu's body. Unless Luo Qingtong had enough strength to resist the Emperor of Tiandu, she would not be able to leave even if she could see through this vortex. The Emperor of Tiandu had countless ways to capture her. Seeing this scene, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly shrank. At this time, a huge skeleton floated in the starry sky where the abandoned continent had collapsed. There were two small dots on its skeleton, appearing so inconspicuous and small. One was pink, the other was white. You little dumpling, why did it take you so long to absorb the power of Torch Dragon's primordial core? We still have to find Master. Wake up. Little Pig stood beside Xiao Tuanzi, its four little hooves pacing on the skeleton with all its might. Only the heavens knew that Xiao Tuanzi would wake up after absorbing the power of the Torch Dragon's Yuan Dan. By then it would be able to get a share of the loot. In the end, after the little ball absorbed the energy, it fell into a deeper sleep. Not only that, his body seemed to be glued to the torch dragon's skeleton. Since Little Pig couldn't take it away, he couldn't leave either. Because the entire torch dragon skeleton seemed to be enveloped by an invisible force, Little Pig couldn't leave at all. What the hell was this little dumpling doing? Little Pig was anxious to death. He'd sensed that Luo Qingtong seemed to be encountering some danger. This was the unique connection between contracted beasts and their masters, allowing them to sense Luo Qingtong's danger at the first moment. Therefore, Little Pig jumped onto Tuanzi's body while squealing. It raised its little hoof and began to slap Tuanzi. "Hey, you little brat, wake up. Master is in danger." As it said this, it suddenly felt that the huge torch dragon skeleton under its body was faintly trembling. Then the trembling became more and more frequent. In the next second. Chapter 2765. Boom. The torch dragon skeleton shattered into countless fragments in an instant. A ball of blazing light instantly enveloped Little Pig and Xiao Tuanzi. Seeing the changes in Xiao Tuanzi, Little Pig was dumbfounded. "Damn, you actually advanced in rank. No wonder you couldn't wake up. Let's go to Master." As Little Pig spoke, Xiao Tuanzi, whose body had doubled in size, and the tuft of hair on his head had turned into two. He immediately chirped. Then with a swoosh, their figures disappeared from the starry sky and appeared beside Luo Qingtong. This was the space shuttle technique that Xiao Tuanzi had comprehended after advancing. It was a sector beast. It could shuttle through tens of thousands of spaces like a fish in water, unhindered by any force. At this moment, Luo Qingtong was looking at the giant spiritual energy hand that Emperor Tiandu had sent over. Her eyes were indescribably solemn. Then with a boom, she felt a ray of light suddenly blossom beside her. Then Little Pig and Xiao Tuanzi appeared in front of her. "Let's go, Master, let's leave this place immediately," Little Pig said in Luo Qingtong's mind. "Xiao Tuanzi has advanced to the growth stage. The sector beast space can be opened and we can be instantly transferred back to the true Spill continent. Let's leave this place immediately." Little Pig also noticed the giant palm that Emperor Tiandu had sent over. *CK, this is too shameless. The opponent's strength was many levels higher than the Sky Martial realm. He actually dared to attack Luo Qingtong, who was only at the Purple Venerable realm. Where was his face? Damn. Little Pig's voice sounded. Luo Qingtong also saw him and Xiao Tuanzi. Knowing that Xiao Tuanzi had regained its strength and had advanced to the growth stage, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed sharply. She could now open the sector beast space to return to the true Spill continent. She looked at the giant spiritual energy hand that was rushing towards her and said with a murderous look in her eyes, "Okay. Let's go." As she spoke, her figure was enveloped in the light of Xiao Tuanzi and Little Pig. At the same time, the light in Luo Qingtong's eyes was abnormally cold and evil. "Endless time, eternal river, open." As soon as Luo Qingtong shouted, an extremely dazzling river of time and space unfurled within her body. Luo Qingtong's consciousness appeared in it. Without hesitation, she pointed a finger at the depths of the galaxy, at the domineering woman in blood-red armor at the end of the line. Boom. Luo Qingtong's gaze changed at once. Her gaze instantly became incomparably bloodthirsty, cold, and domineering. The crimson light in the depths of his eyes was like countless rivers of blood, cleansing and flowing elegantly. "Trying to kill me?" Looking at the giant spiritual energy hand that was rushing towards her, Luo Qingtong's gaze had completely changed. It was incomparably dangerous. The two evil blood bracelets on her hands, which had been motionless after the eruption, instantly trembled violently as if they had gone crazy after sensing her aura. Streaks of crimson light crazily flowed from the bracelets, as if they were fiercely narrating something. That buzzing tremor was like a wail of anguish. "I know, I don't blame you." Chapter 2766. These were the injuries they'd suffered in order to protect her back then. If that wasn't the case with their power, what could that spiritual energy palm be compared to them? It would be nothing more than a speck of light. The coldness in Luo Qingtong's eyes was surging and flowing in her eyes like a substance. "You've done your best. Don't blame yourselves. Protect this lord's body well. In the future I will restore your glory." As Luo Qingtong spoke, her wrist shook violently. In an instant, an extremely violent and vast power that was countless times stronger than the Emperor of Tiandu's attack erupted from her body. Boom. She threw a punch forward. Tyrant fist of heaven and earth. This punch was incomparable to the one Luo Qingtong had used against Situ Mei. As this punch blasted out, an earth-shattering power erupted from Luo Qingtong's fists. With a boom, the spirit chi palm of the Emperor of Tiandu was shattered. Not only that, but the Emperor of Tiandu, who was far above the Golden Palace of Tiandu, seemed to have been attacked by something. With a boom, his body shook violently. Then in the next second his figure flew backward. Poof. His body slammed into the Nine Dragons' golden chair behind him and fell to the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. He had been injured by that power through the connection between him and his divine will incarnation. What? The Emperor of Tiandu was shocked. He looked in the direction of the void in front of him and the scene revealed by the giant vortex. He saw that Luo Qingtong's figure had disappeared into it. The other party had actually broken through his attack and shattered his spirit energy palm. Not only that, but she had also injured him through his own attack. The Emperor of Tiandu was shocked and bewildered. The power just now was so domineering and destructive. Just thinking about it made him tremble. If it wasn't for the fact that they were separated by a great distance and were separated by layers of space, that strike from before would have been sufficient to kill him. What was going on? It was impossible for a young man at the Exalt realm to display such strength. The Emperor of Tiandu's eyes were solemn. He vaguely remembered that when the punch was thrown, the figure of a woman in blood-red armor seemed to appear behind the man. Could it be that the other party had intervened in the battle between him and that young man and rescued him? If that was the case, the other party's identity was definitely not ordinary. That young man was probably not Luo Qingtong's younger brother. If not for this, how could he have met someone like the woman in the blood-red armor, who was born in the 9-star sector and came from a low-level continent? This young man must be a friend that Xianxia had met on the way here. Because he knew about his relationship with Luo Qingtong, he deliberately said that he was Luo Qingtong's younger brother to mock him. Thinking of this, the Emperor of Tiandu's face suddenly turned ugly. At this moment, Xianxia had broken through the power of the giant vortex and rushed in. His figure had just been blocked by the power of the Emperor of Tiandu's divine will incarnation, so he was a moment slower. Chapter 2767. All the strength in his body instantly gathered without any care, and it looked like it was about to burst out in the next second. At this moment, a squawking sound appeared in his mind. It was the little pig's voice. Ayo ayo ayo, Master told me to tell you that she's fine. We've returned to the true Spill continent. Don't worry. As the little pig's voice sounded, the destructive light in Yi Qianxian's eyes instantly dimmed. His eyes swept around the scene and soon his heart calmed down. There was no other reason. At this moment, there was still the residual power of the heaven and earth tyrant fist that Luo Qingtong had just blasted out. Yi Qianxian sensed it and the crazed look in his eyes instantly calmed down. That woman hadn't lied to him. He was really fine. Yi Qianxian had never experienced such great ups and downs. In order to increase his strength faster, and in order to find a way to cure his heavenly pulse body, he had experienced countless life and death situations. However, there had never been a moment like this where his breathing and heart seemed to have stopped. Yi Qianxian had once thought that he loved Luo Qingtong as much as his life. But at this moment he knew that Luo Qingtong was more than just his life. She was his entire soul and the meaning of his life. Without the girl he was nothing. Yi Qianxian didn't doubt that if Luo Qingtong was really captured by the Sky Capital and suffered some kind of torture, he would definitely go crazy. At that time, even if the world was dyed in blood, he would point his sword at the Sky Capital and destroy the heavens and earth. He wouldn't hesitate in the slightest. Qingtong. Yi Qianxian fiercely clenched his hands. His heart was finally at ease. At this moment, the Sky Capital on the other side had also regained his composure. He took a deep breath, climbed up from the ground and coldly ordered, "Immediately send an order to the powerhouses of the 4 sides. Have them immediately rush to the 6-star flying star field and bring Yi Qianxian back." Yes. Voices of agreement could be heard from the void. In the next second there was a boom, and in the starry sky where the abandoned continent was located, figures instantly appeared. These were the powerhouses of the Sky Capital who were relatively close to this place. After receiving the Sky Capital's voice transmission, they immediately locked on to the location and directly transmitted over. There were also powerhouses who appeared in the flying star field one after another. rushing in this direction at an extremely fast speed. They could feel the extremely powerful and terrifying power coming from the starry sky all around them. In an instant, all the forces standing in the distance of the abandoned continent were all shocked. Oh my God, what the hell is going on? Just now, the powerful and terrifying aura was not enough. Now, the auras of so many Sky Martial Realm experts appeared. Was this world a fantasy? One had to know that a Sky Martial Realm expert was already beyond their imagination. Not to mention that there were more than a dozen. Everyone thought that the appearance of Situ Mayer and the others was already the pinnacle of their lives. But now more and more terrifying powers appeared, and in an instant they thought that they were dreaming. The crowd trembled as they looked at the figures in the starry sky, and their faces showed that they were on the verge of fainting. Chapter 2768. While everyone was shocked and trembling, Yi Qianming raised his hand and took out a black underworld summoning token from his sleeve. Originally, he wanted to wait for some time to prepare before revealing them in front of everyone. This way he would have a greater advantage when dealing with Tiandu. But there was no need for that now. Yi Qianming's expression was indifferent as he crushed the black underworld summoning token in his hand. He would not give Tiandu any chance to restrain him and hurt Luo Qingtong. It was enough to make that mistake once. Fortunately, that woman was powerful and not ordinary people could compare to her. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yi Qianming's body turned cold at the thought of it. He was too afraid of losing Luo Qingtong. Today's mistake could not happen again. Boom! Yi Qianming crushed the black underworld summoning token in his hand. In an instant the clouds moved in all directions. Many of the experts from Onyx Palace received his order to gather. Almost in an instant they quickly gathered here. Streaks of terrifying energy appeared in the flying star field one after another, heading toward where Yi Qianming was at an extremely fast speed. Boom boom boom. Feeling the terrifying power of the Sky Martial Realm, the expressions of the people in the distance were simply indescribable. In particular, the owners of these auras all gathered in Yi Qianming's direction. They stood respectfully behind him and knelt down to salute him. Everyone was about to go crazy when they saw this. What the hell was going on? Could it be that this white jade-masked man was not only a terrifying expert who had most likely surpassed the Sky Martial Realm, but also the master of a superforce? Everyone was shocked. At this moment, a person from the 4-star region suddenly raised his hand and pointed in the direction of Yi Qianming and the others. He said anxiously, "Black Underworld Palace. They are from Black Underworld Palace." As soon as his voice came out, everyone was stunned. Then someone sucked in a deep breath and exclaimed, "Onyx Palace. They are from Black Underworld Palace?" The Black Underworld Palace that once created countless legends in the Star region and then suddenly disappeared. Didn't you say that they had already been disbanded? No. We heard that they had been annihilated. There are also some who say that they experienced internal strife and were completely destroyed. Everyone was shocked as they looked in the direction of Yi Qianming's group. It was as if they had seen a ghost. Onyx Palace. The Lord of the Dark Abyss. Back in the countless star fields, he was an existence that no one dared to challenge just by hearing his name. Legend had it that the Lord of the Dark Abyss came from an extraterrestrial galaxy. That was a place beyond their reach. For the rest of his life, it would be difficult for him to break through the barrier to the other side. But now they had appeared here. Could it be that the terrifying cultivators of the Sky Martial Realm who came to fight against the Lord of the Dark Abyss also came from the outer celestial region? Everyone was shocked as they looked at the cultivators of Heaven Capital opposite Yi Qianming. When the experts from Onyx Palace appeared, the latter and the others' faces turned ugly. "Your Highness, you are the Lord of the Dark Abyss." Situmayor looked at Yi Qianming with a pale face. Even in Divine Capital, the Lord of the Onyx Underworld was a fearsome existence. The Onyx Palace was even more terrifying. They had guessed his identity countless times, but they did not expect him to be Yi Qianming. It was His Highness. When the Lord of the Dark Abyss became famous, His Highness was only 8 years old. Chapter 2769. Situ Mayer and the others didn't dare to imagine how frightening Yi Qianming's strength was before. Perhaps what they thought of as His Highness's strength was only what the other party was willing to show them. Thinking of the many families in Tiandu who were dreaming of controlling Yi Qianming, Situmayer's face revealed an extremely bitter smile. If His Highness's strength hadn't increased due to the problem with his meridians, Even if all the experts in Tiandu worked together, they wouldn't be able to shake him in the slightest. Such a powerful and frightening man only had a girl from a low-level continent in his heart. Sidamare had never put Luo Qingtong in her eyes and thought that she was trash who didn't deserve Yi Qianming at all. But at this moment, the jealousy and envy in her eyes were indescribable and completely drowned her. Why was that woman called Luo Qingtong so lucky? Why? While Situmea's heart was filled with jealousy and hatred, Luo Qingtong's figure appeared in a distant and remote corner of the star field. Bang! Luo Qingtong's figure and Little Pig's figure fiercely smashed into a high-level continent. Then with a bang, Xiao Tuanzi's figure fell from midair and landed on Little Pig's body, causing the latter to cry out in pain. Oh my god! Where are you putting your buttocks at, you bastard? My face. Ow ow ow. Little Pig scrambled to get away from Xiao Tuanzi's butt. After Xiao Tuanzi advanced, her body grew bigger. Previously, Little Pig was still able to carry her on his back. It was already good enough that he didn't crush her to death. She suddenly became so fat because she ate too much of the inner core's energy. It was a pity that he worked so hard to find power for her and wanted to get a share of it. In the end, not to mention residue, she didn't even have a bit of air. Little Pig thought of the grievances in his heart. He felt that he had suffered a great loss and sacrificed a lot. He crawled out from under Xiao Tuanzi's body and saw Luo Qingtong lying beside him with her eyes closed. She didn't move at all. Wah! No way. Master, are you okay? Wake up quickly. Little Pig hopped in front of Luo Qingtong and raised his little hoof to slap at Luo Qingtong's face. However, before his hoof could touch Luo Qingtong, the latter's eyes instantly opened. His blood-red eyes were sharp and cold, extraordinary and domineering, as if he was the king of the heavens. Seeing this, the Little Pig immediately retracted its hoof and didn't dare to be impudent anymore. Oh my god. Little Pig's heart thumping. Luo Qingtong's consciousness. Or His Highness. Just as it was thinking, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly changed. Then she shook her head and sat up slowly. She remembered that she had used the power of her previous life when she left. Did she lose her memory again? Luo Qingtong's brows furrowed. Why do I lose my memories every time I use the power from my previous life? Is it because the other party is too strong? Luo Qingtong still remembered the figure of the woman in blood-red armor she saw in the River of Stars. She was domineering, enchanting, and one in a million. Chapter 2770. He remembered now. The statue in the Crimson City. That blood-red statue was exactly the same as the figure of the woman in blood-red armor he had seen in the River of Stars. Except for that face. Luo Qingtong couldn't see the face of the statue in the Crimson City clearly. But apart from that, their clothes and accessories were exactly the same. Luo Qingtong only saw the crimson-armored woman in the land of the deceased immortals and didn't pay much attention to her. Now that she activated the power of the River of Stars again, she suddenly realized that the similarities between the two were almost complete. Could it be that the crimson statue in the Crimson City was her previous life? The owner of the majestic Crimson City? That primordial beast, the master of the Torch Dragon. It was her? Her previous life. Luo Qingtong was shocked beyond words. At this moment, Little Pig's voice suddenly rang out. Damn. Where is this place? You fat dumpling, where the hell did you take us? This isn't the true Spill continent. Little Pig's words instantly interrupted Luo Qingtong's train of thought. She covered her head and tilted half of her body to look around. Just as she was about to spread out her divine sense, she felt a sharp pain in her head. At the same time, her vision turned black and she almost fell to the side. Fortunately, Little Pig rushed over and supported her with his short and fat body. Hey master, are you okay? Little Pig was startled by Luo Qingtong's actions. Was Luo Qingtong alright? What if she was injured in the battle with the Emperor of Sky Capital? That would be the end of her. The Emperor of Sky Capital was so powerful. If Luo Qingtong was injured by him, there was no way for her to expel his power. At that time, Luo Qingtong could only slowly be invaded by his power and die. Just like those people in the land of the deceased immortals who were attacked and killed by Flowing Light's power. As Little Pig thought of this, he suddenly became anxious. And beside it, the little fatty also crawled up from the ground and rolled in front of Luo Qingtong like a big ball of fur. It chirped anxiously at her, its worry written all over its face. I'm fine. Luo Qingtong calmed down for a while and patted their heads. She had overexerted her power. When she was in the Emperor of Sky Capital's teleportation vortex, Luo Qingtong almost pushed her eye technique to the limit in order to find the exit point. Her mental power was completely exhausted, so it was normal for her to feel dizzy and blind. Luo Qingtong checked the power in her body. She realized that not only was her mental strength depleted, but even the strength in her body was depleted in an instant. Damn it! The corner of Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. She was sucked dry after using the power of her previous life. However, she didn't regret in her heart. Power was meant to be used. Otherwise, why would she work so hard to become stronger? The Emperor of Sky Capital's attitude was arrogant and lofty. He wanted to use her to threaten Xianxia and capture her back to Sky Capital. How could Luo Qingtong suffer such a loss? Even if she broke all the bones in her body, she would peel off a layer of his skin. Chapter 2771. Luo Qingtong checked her body and found that it was the same as when she used her previous life strength in the land of the fallen immortals. She had only temporarily lost her strength, so she didn't care too much about it. With her current strength, even if she didn't use her strength, her physical strength alone was enough to blow up anyone below the Venerable Realm. Not to mention she also had the life and death duality sword in her hand. With the sharpness of the sword, even if Luo Qingtong couldn't stimulate the life and death duality sword, it was enough to deal with powerhouses below the Yellow Venerable Realm. Therefore, Luo Qingtong wasn't worried that she would encounter danger. Moreover, she wasn't the same person who didn't know anything when she had just lost her strength. Luo Qingtong had already learned how to draw energy into her body through the Enlightenment Spirit Pill in Sky Wind Inscription City. As long as she wanted to, she could quickly restore her strength. However, Luo Qingtong wasn't in a hurry. The process of losing her power this time might be a good training for her. It would allow her to condense her strength from scratch and deepen her understanding of her strength and realm. Luo Qingtong's strength had risen too quickly when she was on the abandoned continent. In the spiritual energy sea of the abyss, her strength had risen to the 9th level of the Purple Venerable Realm. Although her comprehension of her realm had reached that level, it wasn't deep enough. Therefore, she prepared to slowly condense her strength and restore her strength. She wouldn't do it so quickly so as to solidify her strength and foundation. Therefore, after thinking about it, Luo Qingtong felt that this loss of strength might be a good opportunity. Of course, this would have to wait until she determined where she was. If this was a very dangerous place, then she would pretend that she hadn't said anything and directly restore her strength. No matter how important it was to lay a foundation, it wasn't more important than her own life, right? Luo Qingtong suddenly asked Little Pig, "Can you ask Little Tuanzi where this place is and how far is it from the True Spill continent?" Luo Qingtong guessed that Little Tuanzi originally wanted to send them back to the True Spill continent. This place should be on their way back to the True Spill continent. Perhaps they weren't far from the True Spill continent. As Luo Qingtong said this, Little Pig immediately turned to Little Tuanzi and asked. The two little fellows whispered for a while. Then Little Pig said to Luo Qingtong, "This guy said that this place is very close to the Desolate Star region. It's not far from the edge. We should be in a high-level continent in a nearby 9-star domain," Yizichen said. "As long as we follow the path we'll be able to return to the True Spill continent." As Little Pig spoke to hear, he glared at Xiao Tuanzi and said, "As for Xiao Tuanzi, he doesn't seem strong enough to return to the True Spill continent." Little Pig. Tuan. This way it would be able to regain its strength. Little Pig's face was gloomy. Luo Qingtong listened to Little Pig's answer and immediately understood what was going on. Most likely she had borrowed Little Tuanzi's strength to open the Starry Sky River. Because of this, Little Tuanzi didn't have enough strength and couldn't return to the True Spill continent. Chapter 2772. With that in mind, Luo Qingtong said to Little Pig, "Okay, since that's the case, let's go back. Let Little Furball show us the way." This little guy didn't use the power of the blood-robed armored woman because of her this time. It seemed that its promotion and improvement this time had increased its power a lot. Luo Qingtong thought as she flew out and asked Little Furball about its power this time. After asking, she found out that Little Furball's sector beast space could directly breed a world that belonged to Luo Qingtong. This world was different from the ordinary continents. It was a unique world that contained little furball's sector beast power. Let's put it this way. If Xiao Tuanzi's sector beast ability was of the gold element, then other than being able to lend its ability to Luo Qingtong, it could also create a unique world that contained the gold element law. This world only existed in little furball's consciousness. Through the growth of its strength, that piece of land would eventually perfectly evolve into a complete world. And the master of that world would be Luo Qingtong. In that world, Luo Qingtong's orders were everything. She was the master. As little furball's power grew, unique creatures that contained the law of gold would be bred there. These creatures would all listen to Luo Qingtong's orders and could fight with her summons. Not only that, but Luo Qingtong could also let people enter the world that she owned. The people inside could directly absorb the power of the Great Path of Gold if they cultivated there. This allowed them to have a gold soul seal and cultivate at an extremely fast speed. It could be said that it was a unique world that was completely independent of the world that Luo Qingtong was in. It was another small world. This was why sector beasts were so precious. They could allow people to become the master of a world. Not only that, but they could also use the power inside to cultivate their own power. Little furball's power was even more amazing. It was an extremely rare existence among sector beasts. As long as it could be used well, Luo Qingtong could use the sector beast space it opened to nurture a large number of extremely terrifying forces. It should be noted that Tuanzi's ability was to open the long river of stars so that people could go back to their previous lives and borrow the power of their previous lives. Its ability was to control time. No matter how useless a person was in the space of the sector beast, it was possible for him to develop extremely terrifying power from his previous life. At that time he would be able to be used by Luo Qingtong. Once this ability was developed to the extreme, it would be more terrifying than any sector beast's ability. This was because the sector beast space of other sector beasts did not have an ability like Tuanzi's, which could allow one's power to soar to an extremely terrifying level in an instant. Even if this increase was only temporary, it was still something that others could not hope to achieve. After all, most people would be stuck at a bottleneck and unable to advance. They would never be able to experience and comprehend a higher level of power in their entire lives. However, with Xiao Tuanzi's sector beast space and ability, this was not a problem at all. It was equivalent to giving you the level of power that you could reach in the future in advance so that you could comprehend the feeling of standing at the peak to your heart's content. Luo Qingtong listened to Little Pig's narration and her eyes kept shining. Little furball's ability was really too amazing. Chapter 2773. No wonder those people from the land of the fallen immortals desperately fought for it. Even if they died and were wiped out, they were not willing to leak any information about it. In the end, above its head, a huge resentment condensed and shrouded it, creating the terrifying reputation of the land of the fallen immortals. However, Xiao Tuanzi's strength was still weak. It still had a long way to go before it could grow to the point where it could breed creatures and allow people to cultivate. At this stage it had just opened up the sector beast space. This space was still very fragile and unstable. Its current ability was only to contact its birthplace, the True Spill continent. Through the connection between the sector beast space and the True Spill continent, Xiao Tuanzi could instantly return to the True Spill continent as long as it had enough strength. This ability was quite suitable for Luo Qingtong. It had to be known that she was most worried about grandfather Luo Suyu and the others in the True Spill continent. When she left before, if she didn't know that Xianxia would definitely arrange everything in the True Spill continent, she wouldn't be able to stay in the Heavenly Wind domain with peace of mind. Now that Xiao Tuanzi had this ability, Luo Qingtong could leave the True Spill continent with peace of mind. In the future she wouldn't have to worry about the True Spill continent when she wasn't there. After all, although she could bring grandfather Luo Suyu and the others out, the True Spill continent was their route. Secondly, Luo Qingtong had countless troubles and none of them were easy to solve. Grandfather Luo and the others were safer in the True Spill continent than with her. Therefore, with Xiao Tuanzi's ability, Luo Qingtong was completely relieved. He talked with Xiao Tuanzi for a while. Suddenly, the little guy seemed to think of something and spat out a bunch of things. Luo Qingtong looked at the things Xiao Tuanzi spat out. She couldn't stop herself and almost fell from the starry sky. What's going on? Luo Qingtong looked at the things floating in front of her in shock and her eyes widened. This is sky grass. Damn, so many Tianluo grass. Little Pig was also startled by Xiao Tuanzi's actions. Soon after it began to squeal. Damn you bastard. You swallowed the core of that abandoned continent. Oh my god, so many Tianluo grass. Just how long has the heart of the continent absorbed the power of the great Tao? Little Pig widened his beady eyes in shock. The Flying Star Lien clan and the Tianfeng Chu clan thought that there was only one sky luo grass in the heart of the continent. But then again, they didn't even get close at that time. They only saw the image of a single sky luo grass on the horizon. Naturally, they thought that there was only one sky luo grass here. Who would have thought that the abandoned continent actually hid the secret of an ancient divine object? Moreover, the heart of the continent had been nourished by the power of the great Tao for so many years. And even a pseudo-great Tao spirit and spirit beast had been born. Being able to breed so many sky luo grass seemed to be a very normal thing. Little Pig roughly counted the number of sky luo grass. There were nearly 500 of them. If others were to know about this, all the forces and powerhouses under the 3-star region would go crazy. With so many sky luo grass, how many venerable realm powerhouses could be created?